Yeah, thanks, Dries, and thanks to Johan. I think, first of all, good morning to the panel and to the members online. Uh, it's really appreciated that you have afforded us the opportunity to be part of this discussion. On behalf of Transnet Freight Rail, I express our sincere gratitude because it's also important to us as the rail industry to share with you in terms of how we're moving forward in the current environment within South Africa and the rail reform. So once again, thank you very much. The name is Rishad Yusuf. I've been with Transnet Freight Rail for 35 years. I've come from the engineering department, moved up to commercial. I'm now the executive on the sales and commercial side. I think for the past 7 to 8 years, looking after the sales portfolios. Thanks, Johan, and apologies, and thanks for all the assistance yesterday. We can go on. So this is our opening slide, and you will see that Transnet Freight Rail went through a lot of changes over the past 5 years. And you would know that in the year 2018, 2017, 2018, 2018, 2019, we were producing phenomenal results, way above the 220 million tons. And from 2019, we have taken a downward trend where we were plagued with different challenges. And hence, we are currently sitting in a position where we are. And for the purposes of today, I'll share with you where we are and what our plans are in going forward, especially on the agriculture sector. So the keynote for a Transnet Freight Rail perspective to the audience is, how do we densify our rail network? And the densification, we have no doubt in our mind that there is sufficient demand out there from the industry players. And we don't have a doubt that there is that appetite to collaborate with customers. But we will share with you now on the next slide where we currently are. Thank you. So, colleagues, you would have heard of the rail reform and that has currently taken place in South Africa, and obviously has been legislated by Parliament. The President has signed it off. And what does that mean for us? I know that you may have read about it in the media, but predominantly the government has changed the landscape of freight rail in South Africa, meaning that the monopoly that Transnet Freight Rail had of running their trains as an independent and only operator is obviously now not the same. The infrastructure and the Transnet Freight Rail operating company has been separated. So TFR has been separated into two different organizations, still reporting to Transnet Group. You've got Transnet Infrastructure Manager, and you've got Transnet Freight Rail as a rail operating company. Now, importantly to note that this legislation and this company as Transnet Infrastructure Manager and Freight Rail reports now to the Department of Transport. Previously, we used to report to the Department of Public Enterprise. So that's a major change that has taken place. TRIM, as we call it, as an abbreviation for Transnet Infrastructure Manager, is a regulated body, same as how you've got NERSA as a comparison, and TRIM is regulated through a body which is called IRAC. IRAC is basically the Interim Rail Economic Regulatory Capacity. This body here will dictate and will guide TRIM in terms of the tariffs and what are the roles, responsibilities, and protocols that they need to adhere to as the different rail operators start coming onto a common network. So TRIM is the owner of the total infrastructure, meaning all the rail lines, overheads, the yards, the sidings, and including some of the terminals. Colleagues, I must also state that there are still a lot of adjustments taking place as we speak. Everything is not cast in stone right now because it's a transition phase. There's a lot of things happening. Even from an accounting separation system to a costing perspective, there's a lot of work that is being done. But as you know, that the government had announced that 1 April 2025, there would be a separation in rail, a vertical separation. And obviously, we couldn't go against that. We applied the change, but there's a lot of work that's taking place behind the scenes. So this then introduced the private sector participation, which you would recall if you've seen in the media. You've got the likes of Grindrod, you've got the likes of Traction, you've got the likes of different rail companies that would apply for rail slots and would then be awarded, going through a rigorous process to operate on certain corridors where they have applied for. However, we all know that from the media and from the history over the past few years, there is still a challenge in terms of resources in South Africa from a rolling stock perspective, and more especially around locomotives being available to run on the network. So those are some of the challenges that will have to be dealt with both by the private and the TFR leadership in terms of how do we then expedite locomotives into the country. I think importantly, whilst talking about the TFR position, it's important to state that we are not in the best state from a financial perspective. And that is the greatest challenge for TFR right now. And hence, we have moved to a strategic direction where we are offering some form of collaboration with customers, especially on commodities that we feel doesn't yield the necessary profitability and even the cost coverage on the rail side. And one of those commodities is the agriculture sector. So there's also the change in operating models. The reason to create efficiencies, you would recall historically that TFR would do any train in any area or at any length. They would move what we would call trenkies, 6 wagons, 10 wagons, 8 wagons. And those short trains have a high cost to it. The cost is actually not even recovered by the rate that is put out to the industry. So in order to mitigate and find different solutions to go forward, we had to go back and review how do we deal with such trains and such commodities in the system. So the focus from a rail-friendly cargo perspective is basically to shift that cargo back to rail. And that's predominantly from a high revenue generating commodity. That's generally your mining products. But we do know that especially our general freight business and the need to move the agriculture sector, the need to move containers, the need to move automotives on the GF side is absolutely important to the country. We are fully aware that these products, and especially on the container corridor, better known as the NATCOR, that you guys would know it as, between Durban and Johannesburg, yields at least 50% to 51% of GDP towards the South African economy. And therefore, it is critically important for us to find a way to sustain and grow that line. And therefore, the collaboration strategy becomes so important. And this, in the new South Africa, from a rail reform perspective, I'm talking, will redefine the logistics in South Africa. Because most importantly, it's bringing competition onto the rail network. And this competition was not something that Transnet was used to historically. So it's definitely going to force different operating methodologies, greater efficiencies, because if you as Transnet don't perform, there's another company that's going to be able to take away your piecemeal. Our strategic advantage is that we have the capability, we have from a people perspective, from a resource perspective, and obviously from running the trains. It's how we use that capability to ensure that we provide the required service to the customer. Next slide, Johan. Thank you. So in summary, the densification strategy on rail uh, focuses on 4 blocks that we on the agriculture sector have created. And this strategy is linked specifically on the customer-led solution. How do we partner with the customer? It's not based on the total overall strategy of TFR. It's based purely on the GF side, general freight business, and how do we collaborate with the customer. So if you look at the top left block that talks about intensified focus on critical flows. So for those of you that are familiar with the rail business, you will know that we have more than thousands of flows that are within our system. And what we have realized is that we cannot run every flow. If we're going to have to compete with the private sector on a common network, we're going to have to change the way we do things. Because the cost of our overheads as a state-owned enterprise versus the private sector would definitely be chalk and cheese. So we need to get down to a level where we can at least get the playing fields. I don't think it will get level, but where we can reduce our costs substantially enough to ensure that we're able to compete adequately in this space. So what we did is we then said we need to identify 20% of our flows, and that 20% using the Pareto principle should give us 80% of our volumes and revenue. Because currently, team, that is what is out there in the marketplace. But what happens is you start deviating from it because you get different customer requests and you don't want to turn your back on the customer, but then you take up an offering that you're unable to deliver on and you just create a frustrated customer. So the goal is to then say, let's have open discussions with customers and let's inform them that, this is the route that we want to take. We want to focus on the key flows, and we want to also know in those key flows, how do we partner with you? So we will then consolidate the cargo into common user facilities. Common users, so looking at from a rail perspective, where do we have, as an example, silos that could accommodate the cargo, would adequately long rail lines that would reduce the shunting to, let's say, as an example, a minimum of 2 shunts, or rather a maximum of 2 shunts in the siding. So we can get in, let's say, 16 or 20 wagons at a time. We do 2 shunts, we're able to pull this train out within 24 hours. Instead of us leaving a train in a siding for a whole week, and we have to shunt the siding with 3 wagons or 4 wagons at a time, which is obviously eating into the operating cost. We would then say, okay, how do we collaborate with road? And one of the ways is what we looked at is to say, in the consolidation points, I know that it's going to create double handling, and that's the intelligence that you would share with us. How do we then get road to consolidate at silos where rail can pick up the long haul and run? Because we don't want to work against road as well. We want to collaborate with road. We want to find that partnership and that sweet spot with road. But we see it as road collaborating or consolidating and rail doing the long haul. We also know that even on the long haul, that road will not fall away completely. The road has got its space to play in, but our market share is significantly so low that even if we grow our market share by 10% or 15%, I think road is still playing the equal space in that position, because there's a lot of cargo that we have lost due to the inefficiencies over the past 4 years. And this goes back to then changing the operating model to minimize the shunts, run longer trains, create more competitive pricing, and offer a value solution that is really meaningful to the customer. And then we would look at the non-critical flows. And in these flows, it's basically saying we want to step out of non-critical flows. But we would not turn our backs on these non-critical flows, because you would also find that the private rail operator may come and take up these flows. And that is open to the market as well. But if a customer wants to partner with TFR on any of the non-critical flows through an investment model of wagons, locomotives, sidings, whatever it may be, we can go into the details at another time. We are prepared to look at that. So we're separating the critical flows from the non-critical flows. We want to step away from non-critical flows, but we're opening the door to say that we are still prepared to talk to you if you've got a non-critical flow to us, but you feel that there's value that can be created from it. We're prepared to have a discussion around it. What would be the potential value that we can extract from it? And then it goes on at your bottom right block that talks about the operation excellence. And this is absolutely important from a rail perspective. And we know that we were not doing our best at it. How do we improve the operations? How do we improve communication? How do we improve and create intermodal solutions? We don't have to stick to the norm. We know that globally there's different solutions on the agricultural sector. How do we implement some of those models in South Africa? And colleagues, we are not talking of things that's going to happen in the next 3 years or 5 years. We are actually looking at, we need to turn Transnet around immediately. So we are already busy with some customers in what we call the customer-led solutions, where there are investments to create intermodal solutions. There are investments in the wagons, into the maintenance of the wagons, into the maintenance of the locomotives. So these discussions are taking place as we speak right now. And we open to have the discussion with any one of the colleagues or customers on the line. That's something that we would really appreciate. And that takes us to the last block that talks about how do we partner for growth. And it's all about creating the efficiency and taking that efficiency to you as our customer, and we together form a partnership to grow this. Obviously, we will look at, as I mentioned, the locos, the wagons, the route that we're talking about, the silos, the loading and offloading times. We will even go to the extent that we will go out and develop a new contract with you. And the new contract will obviously have different elements from a pricing, from a costing. And the contract we'll do jointly that is meaningful to you as a customer and to us as TFR. At the end of the day, it must add value to both TFR and the customer. That is something that we need to take back to our TFR leadership, because at the moment, we are in a position that we are costing the company more to run some of the trains. And it's cheaper for them to maybe just say, hey, take those resources and dump it on the mineral and mining products where we're getting the revenue. But we've got a social responsibility to the country, to our people, and to the sector, and within the sector to the greater general freight business. And therefore, we are really in a space that we are saying we want to find a solution for the general freight business And within that, one of these commodities being the agri commodities. Next slide. The next slide talks very simply about, for most of you that have been using rail, it's not new to you. It's a hub-to-hub operating model. You'll find that some of the key elements that would be different is, and I'm going to touch on one of the red flag areas that we've really been challenged with, is the security solutions. Because I'm sure that's going through your mind as well. What are you going to be doing about the vandalism, about the security? So remember, I spoke to you about the vertical separation and trim. So trim is currently now looking at different ways of dealing with security. And TFR, because it falls within the trim body, and obviously DOT is putting a lot of pressure to say, how are you going to be making the rail network safe? The problem has not gone away. I don't want to create expectations that we have resolved all the problems. It's not, separation hasn't solved the problems. I think now is the hard work in terms of how do we solve the problems. But maybe what would be greater from an effectiveness perspective is the fact that there's the separation. Trim obviously has got an open door to the Department of Transport as well. The sensitivity of security and vandalism on the rail network cannot just be overlooked. If we are interested in increasing the volumes and the cargo that we run on rail, one of the key priorities is to sort out the security and vandalism issue, to bring back the locomotives that we need. But, I think you as customers also know that, and it's my belief in my years that I've been here on the railway as well, the more trains we run, the less the opportunity that we afford anybody to enter our network and vandalize the network. So we got to get down to running the trains consistently and keep running the trains. In that way, nobody will be able to just get onto your network. But it's always a chicken and an egg. You go back to the baseline to say, yes, we have to start running the trains, but we have to get the network to a standard, what we call an A standard, for us to start running those trains. So just on that point, I don't want to shy away from it, that there is a lot of work that is being done from an infrastructure and security perspective, from a Transnet Rail Infrastructure Management Division perspective. On the transit freight rail, we know that our opportunities lie in a hub-to-hub or siding-to-siding operating model. We want to move away from the shorter trains, as I discussed earlier. We want to run longer trains. And actually, we want to even get to beyond the 50 wagon norm that we run on the NATCO, or the container corridor between Durban and Joburg, or the Free State and Durban. So the intention is even on the agri side, where on the Bethlehem Kroonstad line, starting at Ladysmith, where we run 32 wagons, we want to run the 32 up until Ladysmith, and from Ladysmith we want to run 64 wagons down to Durban. So those are some of the initiatives that we're pushing for in terms of running longer trains. But this is across the country, wherever we are running GF. You'll see there's a red oval on your right-hand side that talks to investments and collaboration. That basically speaks to the fact that how do we deal with the position where we don't have adequate rail wagons, because we've been running these wagons and we've been parking them off because we don't have the funding to maintain them. And this is where we are engaging with customers that are coming in and collaborating with us on what we call the customer-led solution. And they are investing in the maintenance of these wagons. It's got a fixed term to it. The norm is 5 years, with an opportunity to extend for a further 5 years. These wagons will become ring fence for you as the customer, and it will be run obviously within those routes that you have dictated. And obviously behind that, there is a contractual agreement and a commercial agreement that will detail how we do this. And the unpacking of that, we would do with you as a customer on a one-to-one basis. But very importantly is that we want to change the operating model from a train-key system that we're currently running to a hub-to-hub operating model to gain the efficiencies. And I know that it's not also easy on the agri side because of some of the silos that you may have. But let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Let's understand where the system works and where it doesn't work. And where it doesn't work, what are those challenges? And are there any mitigating ways for us to address the challenges? And if there's no way to address the challenges, how do we go forward? And if there is a way, how do we partner to mitigate the challenge? I think that's a summary of this slide. And that's it from my side to you as a valued customer and stakeholders and partners in this sector that we deal with from a rail perspective. Thank you very much.